Hi, this is Patricia Stepler, and welcome to Your Inside Power, where our whole objective is to help you to utilize the gifts you have inside of you to create the life that you want. And today is no exception to that. And I've got some great things for you today about the 6 intellectual faculties that only human beings have. And that's what our topic is going to be about today, and how we can use those 6 faculties to build the life that we want and to get the results that we want. Now, I have a good question for you here, and something that you may need to hear a couple times to really get it to sink in. But if all action is the result of our thoughts or our thinking, does it stand to reason that our thoughts need to be organized? Now, again, if all results are a matter of our thoughts and thinking, which we know that it is, and we can prove that through various means, do we need to be organized in our thinking? And of course, the answer to that would be yes. And yet the average person thinks in random. They don't really take time to organize or to think. You know, we often spend more time planning a week vacation than we do planning our lives, because for some reason, we don't realize that we have that opportunity to plan the life that we choose. And we just think life just happens, and it doesn't. Sometimes it happens because we're not controlling it, but we have the ability to control the life that we have. But yet we spend all this time planning vacations, but yet very little time do we put into who we are, what do we really want, and what kind of life do we want. And if we spent time doing that, we could create exactly what we want and know that we want deep in our heart. We just don't think we can have it. So we attract only what we think about. Now, that can be positive or negative. You can attract negative things in your lives just as easily as you can attract positive things. And sometimes it's this intuitive factor that is in your thought patterns too. So we have to think, but then we also have to act. And sometimes people miss that acting part. Without action, you're not going to get a different result. And of course, that just makes sense. But we have to organize our thinking so that we do things in a structured way. And this is no different than building business. You know, if you're building a business, you need to have some structures, processes, systems in place if it's going to be able to really grow and scale. Otherwise, it's going to be sporadic, and you're going to have up and down, and it's not going to be consistent. And without those systems and structures in your business, it will falter. Well, the same thing happens with our thinking. Without the structure that we need, our thinking and our life starts to falter too. So problems come by not controlling our thinking. And this will also often happen when we tend to react to a situation instead of thinking and responding. So when we're reacting, we're just going with whatever's happening at the moment, and we're allowing our senses to take control instead of these 6 intellectual faculties, which will help us to respond to things in a way that we are in control instead of allowing the world to control us. So nature, if you look at nature, it's very orderly and very disciplined. There's a system and a structure to it. You know, you plant the seed will sprout, the seed's attracting everything it needs to it. It becomes, a plant of whatever. It grows in a systematic way, and so on and so forth. It's very structured. If nature is structured, then we need to be in that kind of control and discipline in our own lives. Now, sometimes discipline comes up with this negative connotation. Discipline is simply giving yourself a command or an order and following it. So telling yourself what you're going to do and then doing it. And that's what really discipline is. So let's take a look at these 6 intellectual faculties that can improve our lives and can help us to move forward with what we want. Self-control is going to be paramount to this whole discussion. We have to learn to organize our thought. We have to direct our thoughts. We have to be constant in our thoughts and thinking towards what we want. So first thing, I want to give you some practical ideas of things to do in order to accomplish this. So first thing I want you to do is to spend 30, 60 minutes just really thinking, what if there were no limitations at all, what do I really want? What would I like my life to look like in 5 years, in 3 years, next year, this year? What do you really want? And allow your mind to just, run wild. That doesn't mean that you're really going to go after all those things. You may change your mind. You may say, it's not really what I want. It was just kind of a funny idea I had. But what do you really want in life? And really spend some time thinking about, who am I? What do I like to do? Not what somebody else tells me I like to do, because a lot of times we do things that other people think we should do, and we allow them to control us. Let's start to control ourselves. Let's start to think for ourselves. Let's start to be responsible to ourselves. So let's take those 6 intellectual faculties. The first one we're going to talk about is imagination. I've mentioned this many times, but imagination is so powerful, and you can utilize it in such a way to create the life that you want. So human beings have been gifted with these 6 intellectual faculties. Imagination is the most powerful. You can build the image in your mind. You can pretend that you are actually there. You can pretend that you're interacting with people. You can hold conversations in your mind. You can kind of think about the way you want a situation to go, focus on it enough, and a lot of times it will go exactly that way. Why? Because people are going to pick up on your vibration. And if you've already planned it, they're just picking up on your feelings, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's the intuition. But we build this image, we pretend that we're there, we see ourselves with the good that we desire, whatever the situation is. It might be a relationship, it might be your health and your weight. I have a friend who's always talking about how her health is bad, and she just keeps talking about it and talking about it. If she just let it go and just start saying, I feel really great, and stop allowing herself to dwell on her health, she'd feel a whole lot better. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily everything's going to go away that is wrong with her and physically wrong, but she'll start to feel better because she's not dwelling on it. Do you see the difference? You can't dwell on it. So in your imagination, when you start to build these ideas of what you want, this is what happens. You're putting that message out. Remember, we talked about in let me grab my book here, in The Science of Getting Rich, when Steve Wallace talks about there's the thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in original states permeates and penetrates and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in that substance produces the thing that's imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon the formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. So as you're forming that image in your imagination, you are putting that thought out to the universe. Well, when you do that, you're going to find at different times during the day, an idea will suddenly pop into your mind. That idea is there because of that thought you put out. Now, not every idea is going to be the right idea. You will have to, start to look at them a little differently. But when you get an idea, write it down. I want you to always have something with you to write down your ideas, because if you don't, they will go that quickly. Now, here's the thing. When you get a really good idea, you need to act on it fast, because the universe likes speed. So that idea comes in, you've written it down, you act on it. Why is that important? Because there's how many billion people in the world, and they're also thinking of ideas, and ideas are coming. And if you choose not to work on that idea, it's going to go to somebody else, I guarantee you. And I can tell you, I know a couple people, at least 2, who have had this. They've had this idea for an invention, they got an idea, they put it together, and that was it. They did not go any further. They didn't try to produce it. They didn't try to, get it trademarked or anything, and somebody else produced it. And in both those cases, like, I had that idea before that ever came out, but you didn't act on it. So you have to act on those ideas. And that's why it's so important, because somebody else will get that idea if you don't. So very important. Use your imagination, build the image, keep building it, keep building it, keep building it. And then use the other intellectual faculty, the will. Why is the will important? This is not like willpower that keeps you from doing something you don't want to do, like eating that piece of chocolate cake that you know you shouldn't eat because you're trying to be healthy. It's not that kind of will. It's keeping focused and keeping focused on that idea. And when you do that, when you are so focused on your idea, it's got to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if it will happen. It's a matter of when. And when you keep focused, this is the advantage. You will start to turn down things that are not in alignment with that image. So you've got this goal of what you want, and some friend says, hey, you want to go with me, to do da, 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 da. You're going to say no, because it's not in focus with you, or they're going to get distracted. Why don't you do this with me? And it's going to take up too much time. And you're going to say no, because it's not in your focus. And that's the advantage of holding something with the will. It's keeping out the distractions that are going to get in your way and keep you from reaching that goal. So you have to be able to say no to things that aren't in alignment with you. So that's the imagination and the will. Now let's look at another intellectual faculty, reason. I'd like to say everybody reasons, but we know that's not true, because a lot of people just allow senses to have them react, and they're not reasoning at all. I want you to start to look at situations and really think. Reason is one of the most beautiful gifts we've been given. Now, imagination is powerful, but reason is our thoughts, our ability to think, our ability to give thought properly, and to be able to look at a situation and see if it's making sense. Now, like I said, a lot of people react, and that's part of the biggest problem in this world. We're not taking time to learn to respond. And I'm sure there's a lot of underlying reasons in that. I'm not going to get into all that today, but reasoning is being able to take yourself back from a situation, think about it, and then make a good response instead of just reacting. The violence you see, that's a reaction. That's not thinking. It's even some of the protesting. It's not thinking. It's a reaction to something. And when we start to give thought, then we can start to communicate. The biggest problem to communication with other people is the fact that we're not reasoning. We're not thinking. We're not using those skills that we've been so gifted with. And we're allowing them to not be part of our lives. And that's a travesty, really, in what we're doing. So this gives us thought, and great thought is needed to respond instead of react. So thinking and reasoning allows us to step outside of our box, our comfort zone. So often we are in that comfort zone, and we feel that everything is scary if we step outside. But when we reason a situation, we think something through, then we develop that courage to go ahead and get it. And, we look at that terror barrier, and I've talked about that before. If you look in some of the past episodes, the terror barrier is that fear that we feel, and it's totally natural. You get this idea, you want to do something different, and then you go into action, and all this fear comes inside your body, and it's real. Fear is real in that situation. And what you have to realize is when you reason, when you've thought about it and you reason, it doesn't mean the fear goes away. It means that you're willing to step outside the box, because you You've thought it through. And you've got a plan. This helps you to organize and get a plan. And keep in mind, we become what we think about. Now, there's a story in a book called U Square. And in this book, U Squared is about this fly. Now, a fly doesn't have these abilities. And a fly doesn't have the ability to reason. And so this fly, and you've seen this, I know, is flying into the window because it's trying to get out. And it doesn't realize that that window's not going to change. And so it will just keep hitting the window and hitting the window. And eventually it's going to die on that windowsill. When if it had just moved a little further, it could have gone out through a door that was open. And that's what we do. We do the same thing as that fly. We will continue to try to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Definition of insanity, right? And we'll keep trying to do it over and over again instead of stopping, looking at the situation, reasoning about it, and going another direction. So now we've covered imagination, will, and reason. I hope you're starting to see how these can help you. When you use that reasoning faculty, again, you go back, you're organizing your thoughts so that you're actually moving forward and you're mapping out a plan. That's what reasoning can do. You start to map out a plan. Doesn't mean that your plan's perfect, but you've got a plan of action that you're going to take because you build it in the imagination, you're focusing on it with the will, you're building this plan of action, and now you're going to move forward. So next intellectual faculty is perception. And this one is so important. And I often say, because I'm a Libra, and Libras are like the scale of justice, and they can weigh all different sides of an issue. And I've always said that I can always see the other person's perspective. And I think I've sort of always been that way. But now that I understand these intellectual faculties, it's even more that way, that I can see, I have my idea, but I can see somebody else's idea. And I can see where they're coming from. It doesn't mean I necessarily agree with their idea, but I can understand from their perspective why they think that way. Now, there's sometimes I wonder why they do think that way, but at least it gives me the idea of understanding somebody else's perspective. And I catch myself sometimes with one of my children or my husband, and they'll tell me the story, and immediately I'll say, well, but what's their side of it? There's two sides to every coin. You can't see both sides at the same time. And so you have to look at, well, how's that other person thinking? And when you can do that, like I said, it doesn't mean you go over to their idea if it's so totally foreign to your thought process, but you understand where they're coming from, and then you can talk to them. And you can start to use your reasoning faculties, and maybe you'll be able to pull them to your side. Maybe you won't because they're so stuck in that idea. But at least you develop an understanding, and then you can start to compromise. If it's a situation in work or in your business or in your relationship, you can start to compromise and understand. And when you use your perception and you can start to understand somebody's background, that becomes really important too, because we've all had different experiences. We are the person we are because of the people we've met and the experiences that we've had, the things we've read, that all goes into who we are. And so nobody else has the exact same background as you, even if it's your sibling. It's still different because you've met different people, you've read different books, and so we're all a little bit different. And because of that, we have different perspectives, and our perception of an idea is different. We can see the same incident happen and have two different interpretations. Why? Because we're coming from two different backgrounds. And, that's why, police reports, people may see opposite because of their perception. So when we learn how to shift and be able to see somebody else's perspective, it's like stepping into a different world. And sometimes we'll pick up different ideas that will actually help us build that better imagination, hold that will better, and reason better because we've been able to be more perceptive. And it will build for stronger relationships when you can be more perceptive because you're not going to react. You're going to start to learn to respond. And you're going to use those other intellectual faculties we just talked about in dealing with people. In fact, if you're dealing with a very difficult person, use your imagination and build the idea in your mind of how you want that relationship to go. You know, maybe it's somebody difficult you're dealing with at work. Build in your mind how you want that conversation to go, how you want them to treat you, how you want to interact with that person. And here's what happens. You automatically will start interacting with that person differently. And when you interact differently with them, they have to interact differently with you. It's just the way it works. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is intuition. And I love talking about intuition because intuition is picking up on other people's vibrations. And a lot of times we're so busy and we're so focused on ourselves that we don't really think about other people a lot. Maybe you do, but that's what I see a lot in the people that I'm around is that we're so into what we're doing. And sometimes we don't really take the time to pick up on other people's vibrations. You see, everything's moving at a very high rate of speed. Everything you see around you is moving very quickly. And so are you. And they proved this with photography, that they could see the vibrations that people are in, and they test all that. And here's the thing, when you're vibrating at a very high rate of speed, people are picking up on that vibration. You're sending it out and others are picking it up. So the intuition is you're picking up those ideas. They also say that, you know, you can pray to God, but God prays to us through our intuition. And sometimes that intuition protects us. We can sense a danger around us and get ourselves out of it. And sometimes it's just really good to have, but we have to start paying attention to our intuition because a lot of times we just ignore it. And when you start to really pay attention to your intuition, you start really to pay attention to other people, you'll pick up on, you know, if they're not feeling well, or if you've said something that maybe offended them, you start to pick up on it. And you start to sense, even from what they say or their body language or what they do, you can pick up on their vibration. And you can start to learn a lot about people and, again, build better relationships when you use your intuition. And again, it's messaging. And I know I've told this story before, but you may not have heard it. My daughter was moving from Pennsylvania to Florida, and we were loading up a U-Haul truck. And for some reason, after the whole truck was loaded, I went to the door to walk down to our mailbox to get the mail. And as I reached our front door, I got this intuitive message to look at the tires. And I thought, why do I look at the tires? Well, when I went out, sure enough, one of the back tires, it was slashed, and it would never have made it from Pennsylvania to Florida without blowing. And my husband and my daughter or granddaughter were going to be riding in that truck, and they could have had an accident. So I listened to my intuitive factor, even though my first reaction was, why would I look at the tires? I listened because that was a message coming to me. Now, had I seen something inadvertently and just didn't think about it? I don't know. Or was it a message from God? I don't know. I'm just saying I picked up on my intuition. It's very important. So the last thing I want to talk about, the last intellectual faculty, is memory. And a lot of people think they have poor memory. The average person's been told, oh, you don't have very good memory. We do. We are perfect. Our spiritual DNA is perfect. We are perfect inside of us, which is why, you know, this is your inside power. It is perfect. And our memory is perfect, but sometimes we need to strengthen it. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, if you don't try to strengthen it, It's not going to be as good as it could be, but it's still, the memory's perfect. And every memory you have is stored in your head. You just need to organize it and think about it and pull it out. So there is perfection within you, and the awareness of your perfection brings you much closer to your results. So start realizing the perfection inside of you. Develop a future memory. Think about what you want to happen. You've built your image, right? Lock it in with that memory and build that future memory. And you can go so much further in life. And then describe in detail what your future life is and commit to doing the actions that will make that memory for you. And that's basically, it all goes together. It's the thoughts, because we become what we think about, but those thoughts will drive us into the actions that we need to do in order to accomplish the goal that we want. So this is the kind of thing I help my clients with. I develop system and structures for them. If they're in business, we develop those processes together. If they're not in business and just creating, the life by design, I have a great course for that, where I take you so that you understand this without a doubt in your mind, how to create the life that you choose and, develop to the person that you can be. See, inside of us, I believe that we all have this beautiful vision of what we want. And my purpose as a coach is to bring that vision and give it to you in reality. It's just a matter of understanding the shifts that you need to do in order to accomplish the goal. So reach out to me. I've put my information in the show notes. You can go to, my social media and click on the bio to get more information. If you're building a business, let me know, and I can help you develop the systems and structures in order to accomplish it. And you can create the most amazing business and the most amazing life that you want.